Online delivery of intensive software engineering education during the COVID-19 pandemic. The authors of this paper were Matthew Barr, Waqar Nabi and myself, Derek Somerville. So this was a graduate apprenticeship, or is referred to in England a degree apprenticeship, so the students are working for a company about 80% of the time and 20% of their time at the university to get an honours degree. It was the first year, second semester, and here, rather than day release, it's done in teaching blocks. So it's an 8-week teaching block. And during the 8-week teaching block, it was 4 hours of instruction tuition almost every day. And this was 40 credits of a 120 credit first year course. The university stopped face-to-face teaching in week 2. In week 1, some students did self-isolate. So for the first week, it was done both online, but the majority of students were all face-to-face. From week 2 onwards, it was all done online. So the courses covered were practical algorithms, testing and software improvements, and web application systems. So in terms of practical algorithms, this is more of a theoretical course, discrete mathematics and data structures and algorithms. This was an 8-week teaching block, and it had live face-to-face lectures, online synchronous lectures and recorded lectures and live tutorial sessions. For the online synchronous lectures, the 2-hour live online classes were tedious, and peer observed concurred the students didn't like them, and there was limited interaction with cameras off. So to deal with this, lectures were recorded for the students to watch at their own pace. This started in week 4, for the students could pre-watch them with the lectures in chunks of 5 to 25 minutes. The live tutorial sessions were then led more as a flipped classroom to discuss the content of the recorded lectures. In terms of the lecturing style, as we can see from this chart here, live synchronous online lectures were the least preferred of the learning styles. It was next the live face-to-face lectures, and then slightly more prominent actually was the pre-recorded lectures and then the live tutorial sessions, so that we may actually start using that going forward even post the pandemic. And so what went well? The weekly Moodle multiple choice quizzes went well, so did the preparation from the tutorial sheets and the lab exercises, and linking to additional material was appreciated by the students. What went less well? Well, the rapid pace of the course. The students felt there was a lot covered within the 8 weeks. The group activities were poor in terms of the interaction. The students tend to work on their own. This is also seen for the dedicated time for the labs of the tutor. Students tend to just work on their own. And then the live tutorials, they were discussing and reviewing the recorded content, but this wasn't appreciated by the students because they felt it was just duplication since they had already watched it. And then there was a general lack of visibility of the students since cameras were off, and it just wasn't the same as being face-to-face where you're seeing the students. So testing and software improvements. So this was a 2-week blocks with 2 hours almost every day. So the first 2 weeks was slightly done prior to the next course, which is web application systems, so that you would get a bit of experience of working through a project, and then the second part was more focused on the testing. And this was mainly practical, covering clean code, refactoring and testing. In terms of the live 2-hour sessions, the students had to do pre-reading, and then they did a class test for this, and then they had short 20 to 30 minute lectures. Then following the 20 to 30 minute lectures, they had active learning discussions about what was covered in the lecture, and or there was a lab to actually practice what had been covered. In terms of this course, there were regular milestones for the students to focus on, with both group submissions and individual submissions. And I think both having some time with the groups being formed beforehand and having the group submissions meant there was quite a lot of good group interaction for this course. The groups were split with the top 5 ability in the first group, with the aim of allowing them to do more advanced topics for the group project, and then mixed ability for the other. But the 2 of the groups though did slightly complain that they felt they were missing someone stronger, and they in the whole felt slightly lacking. So there was pros and cons of this approach. And in terms of the communication was set up, so the students had like a channel or a chat where it just, for each group, had just all those students, so it was private and they were able to talk independently of themselves, but also was set up a separate channel and chat which had the students for the group plus the lecturer. So the lecturer could then chat with them, see if they're all going well. If they had any problems as a group they were in, they were able to go and set up a video and shared screen and discuss those issues with them to try and help them resolve it. So one of the lecture styles that went well was more of a Zoom interaction. So this was covering testing and mocking unit tests, and the students had to guess the results. And Zoom chat was used for the students to get the results, and this was very positively received from the students, with the students individually coming to the lecture to say how much they enjoyed it, as well as the class representative having a chat with the lecturer, highlighting that they had very positive response and they themselves had really enjoyed this sort of two-way flow of interacting and trying to understand how things were working. Web application systems was a 4-week block in the middle of lockdown. So the students had a little bit of prior experience with this, of using both Zoom and MS Teams. This was both a theoretical and practical course, with lectures covering the concepts and then labs for students to develop a substantial piece of coursework. In terms of the teaching, student feedback was that it concentrated 2 hours, unexpectedly tiring for the students, and the lectures broken into 20-minute live chunks with regular breaks. Pre-recorded short videos were also done because, as was seen, more focus was done for these during the teaching time on the lab work. So therefore the pre-recording lectures allowed the content to be covered, and then the significant practical coursework was covered. In terms of also, students were suffering in silence with webcams off, no body language or eye contact. And in terms of a solution to this, they were divided into smaller groups of 5 to 6, and they all had an MST private channel to then communicate with each other. And there was higher level expertise was sort of distributed equally throughout the teams. And then consistent tutor support groups, so each tutor was allocated a dedicated group, so they had a consistency of that. And they also generated a most helpful student award, and it was very much the peer interaction and helping each other was encouraged, and the teamwork did seem to work very well. In terms of student support, lockdown raised a number of questions for the students, and Zoom-based drop-in sessions were created for the first 2 weeks. And a handful of students did make use of these, but it sort of tailed off after the first week. But additionally to this, an MS channel was created called Chatter for any sort of mental health challenges, but it wasn't mentioned that it was for mental health challenges, but just encouraged for students that wanted to discuss things. And it was noticed that this channel was still quite active after 3 months, and I think a lot of students benefited from this interaction with each other. So in terms of, in conclusion, software engineering was successfully delivered online, and relatively straightforward adjustments for how the courses were done, and no size fits all. And smaller chunks of the lectures were more preferred. And consideration of group work to try and have some sort of collaboration and cohesion with the student populace is good. And pay attention to the student feedback. And some of the interactions that were done in terms of adjusting for the COVID were actually well received, and will be considered for post-pandemic era, i.e. doing the recorded lectures. Thank you very much for your time.